Thank you. Welcome. My name is Delegate Robin Lewis, and you are in the Livable Streets Coalition Design Thinking Part 2 workshop. Thank you so much for joining us. This meeting's being recorded. I would like to do a quick welcome and introductions. So you guys know me, Delegate Robin Lewis. I represent the 46th Legislative District, and that includes all the communities around Baltimore Harbor. And I live in the Patterson Park neighborhood. I'm joined tonight by two fantastic presenters, Livable Streets leaders. They are Carol Kachadurian. Carol is a master transportation planner with years of experience working all over the United States, helping communities to build more livable, human-centered streets. Carol is with us on the Livable Streets Coalition, courtesy of the American Association of Retired Persons, the AARP, which has seconded her to support us with her technical expertise on planning and community engagement. So thank you, Carol. And I'd also like to introduce Eden Rhodes. Eden, can you wave? Eden is with us as a student intern through the Dent Education Program. Eden is a brilliant and energetic student at Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, and she's a trained expert in design thinking. So she's here with the Livable Streets Coalition to help to train us and help us really be better people. And finally, I'd like to introduce my staffer, my legislative director, Amelia Marcus. A lot of you have seen Amelia's name in emails. She's a wonderful person who sends you information and reminders. And Amelia will be with us tonight, making sure that we stay on time and helping us to answer questions and keep track of things. I'd like to then quickly share a meeting overview. We will be together until 7 o'clock tonight. We will try to respect your time and stick to schedule. During this workshop, we'll be giving you a quick overview of design thinking. If you attended the Part 1 design thinking training on May 25th, as I recall it was, if you attended that training, you're familiar already with design thinking. If you weren't there, a quick overview that we will share will give you some context and get you oriented. Carol is going to talk with us quickly about that and a few other key things. Next, we'll dive deep into design thinking with Eden. She will conduct a training and we'll finish the last sort of segment of design thinking principles. We'll practice, we'll do a couple of polls, and we're gonna hone in on your ideas for a community project that will be done by all of us here in the Livable Streets Coalition. Last, we'll do a quick wrap up and next steps. So there's lots more to come. I'm still admitting a couple people into the room. Before I hand the mic over to Carol, I'd like to share a couple of quick housekeeping and norms with you. With regard to housekeeping, please feel free to use the chat. We will be recording and documenting all of your comments, ideas, and suggestions in the chat. Feel free to communicate there. For those of you who may feel like you need a little more time or space to interact when we do the design thinking exercise on Miro software, feel free to just jump on the chat. Amelia and I are here. We'll make sure that your input gets heard. Lastly, I want to make sure that while we're together in this room, we really practice the design thinking core principle of empathy. Empathy is at the center of all that we want to do as a community. We should practice it in this room. We should speak to each other with respect. And at no point is it acceptable to put down other members of this community to denigrate or disrespect their concerns or interests. All ideas are welcome. Everybody's feelings and ideas are welcome. And I think that's all I want to say. I will, unless there's something else. Carol, did I have anything else? Oh yeah, I remember. There was one little thing. One teeny tiny thing. As you guys all know, the Livable Streets Coalition has a focus area. That focus area is centered around Fayette Street and Orleans Street. Those two corridors running from about Broadway over to Highland, encompassing 7 neighborhoods. That's the Livable Streets, our core footprint. The principles that we learn and the ideas we generate can be applied anywhere in Baltimore City. But the Livable Streets Coalition has this focus area. And we know that you guys are interested in doing projects in that focus area. Most of you who are here live in this footprint. We have an opportunity to do projects somewhere in that area. And right now, what seems a very promising location for the first Livable Streets project is the area close to the William Paca Elementary Middle School. I mention that to you now to sort of help you put your minds to work when you think about where we could do our first project. We've been in communication with the principal of William Paca School, and she and her team and the kids, the little kids at that school, are really interested in doing traffic calming there. It's important because it's right by Library Square. The school is bounded by Fayette and Orleans, so it's really affected by high-speed traffic. And it's a great starting point for community, coordinated community action. So hold that idea in your minds as we move forward. Okay, with that, Carol, I think it's fair to hand the mic over to you.
Thank you, I'm happy to. As Delegate Lewis said, this is Design Thinking Part 2. As a reminder, this is a slide that Eden used at, and when she gave an overview at a coalition meeting way back in March. You can see the 5 steps of design thinking. The most important one that Delegate Lewis mentioned about is empathy, and then define, ideate, prototype, and test. And as you can see from the little diagram with the arrows, it really is an iterative process. Each one affects the other. At our main workshop, Design Thinking Part 1, Eden trained us and we practiced empathy, define, and ideate. Today we're focusing on prototype and test, but Eden will review the define and ideate work that you all did at that May meeting. And again, with incorporating empathy in it. Does anybody have any questions about these 5 steps or thoughts, reactions?
Carol, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we start, would it be okay to take a group photo right now before I forget again?
Yeah.
So if all of you participants, if you are comfortable, we'd love to take a screenshot with all of your smiling faces as a way to document who was here, so that we remember you and so that we can share that. So Amelia, can you help us? Tell us what we need to do.
If possible, could we stop sharing the screen for just 10 seconds?
Yes, I can do that.
Perfect.
There we go.
Okay.
Hey, Aileen, Kate and Sarah, Father Michael. All right, Devin,
Okay.
You're beautiful. Do you want to turn your camera on too?
No, because I look crazy.
First of all, that I know that's not true, but we respect your boundaries, darling. Okay.
All right, everyone. I will take a screenshot in 3, 2, 1. Got it. Everyone.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Amelia, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. I'm going to drag my gallery over to my other monitor and start sharing again. So now that we've documented our participation, that's really a symbol of the fact that we are all working together. This is really the result of all of our thoughts and experiences and love of the neighborhoods in the coalition area. And so in that spirit, we really want to make sure that we engage you today. And so Eden's going to talk about the engagement techniques that we've used in the past, the reminder of what we've used and what we're going to use today. So take it away, Eden.
Hi everyone, I'm Eden and I'm working with the Livable Streets Coalition through Dent Education. As Delegate Lewis has previously said, today we will be using Zoom as well as a software called Miro, which allows you to essentially see a presentation all in one place. And there is a map icon where you can move around on Miro and see everything in one place. And as far as Zoom, you can use the chat. People will be looking out and taking notes on your comments, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions or concerns. And I will go more in depth about what I want you to do on the Miro board later.
Thank you. We are ready for design thinking, and I am going to stop sharing, and now Eden is going to share her screen and get us started.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
I should actually start by putting this in the chat, the link to the Miro board. Okay, so
why do we need that link, Eden? What can you explain, remind everybody why that link is important?
Oh yeah, because there's going to be an activity at the end where I will be having you guys create a vision board. But if you're not comfortable using Miro on your computer, feel free later on to also just comment in the chat, or there will be an opportunity to send things to my phone that I can help you with. And I will also be sharing my screen so we can do it all together as well. Okay, so to start off, we have an opening circle question. This question is, why did you join this coalition? And what do you hope to accomplish as a member of the coalition? If anyone would like to come up with me and share their responses, I also have a few of your responses off of the registration form, if you'd like me to share. All right, well, a few people said because they want safer and calmer streets, people want to become more knowledgeable, people want to improve equitable access to safety, people want to assist their neighbors and learn design education. And if there's any comments in the chat, please let me know.
Yes, Eden, there's a comment in the chat. There are a couple. Mm-hmm. One of them comments is safety in the neighborhood. Another comment is to reduce crime. Thank you, Aileen, for that input. And we'll make sure those comments get recorded. And for those of you who want to, you can go to the chat box, click on the link that Eden provided. And once you click on that link, it'll take you to another window where you can, in real time, type your thoughts on a Miro screen, and we'll all see it. If you're more comfortable typing your ideas in the chat, you can do that too. Eden, here's one more.
Yeah.
Build community and get to know neighbors, hopefully new friends, from Kate and Sarah. Thank you.
Yes, I see a lot of things about collaboration as well. I think that's going to lead us into our next activity. We will have some Zoom voting in just a second. So I'm going to bring everyone to me on the Miro board. So in a last design thinking workshop, you guys thought of 2 point of view statements and you guys were in 2 different groups, but now we're all together. So I've essentially brought both of these point of view statements and brought them together into one. I'm going to read them aloud. The first one is families, children, and people living on arterial streets need a way to incentivize people to drive slower down arterial streets and use alternative methods of transportation. But we don't understand what motivates speeding behavior or how to incentivize alternative behaviors. The second one is children and adults need a way to recreate outside for a healthy lifestyle, but they can't because of the unhealthy, illegal, unsafe environment in the neighborhood. Okay, and the one that we've created today with using the 2 point of view statements that you guys both thought of, that you guys have all thought of last time, are the residents of the 46th district need creative ways to slow down traffic on arterial streets to help contribute to the livelihood and overall positive lifestyle. Now, there should be an opportunity for you guys to vote on this point of view statement here in the yellow box. There should be a poll that pops up on your screen. It'll essentially just be asking you if you agree or disagree with this statement. If you disagree with this statement, feel free to comment in the chat what you dislike about it, and either Amelia, Delegate Lewis, or Carol will catch it in the chat, and we will talk about how to improve the statement for the future.
So, thank you, Eden. I just want to make sure everyone knows we're about to start a poll. Yep. So I'm going to click on the poll button for you, right, Eden?
Yes, you are.
The poll question is what you see in the yellow box on your screen. And so we're going to ask you if you agree or disagree with this statement that was created at the last design thinking meeting. So here comes the poll. Oh, it says I can't get into the poll. Hang on, guys. Amelia, can you get into it?
I just launched it.
Yeah.
So the poll is active.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's poll number 3. Can everyone see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, good, because I can't, but I'm not. Nobody wants to know what I think today. We want to know what you guys think. Thanks, Amelia.
Aileen, there is only one poll question. It's just poll question number 3. Yeah. We're going to have a second one, which will be poll question number 4. So. It said number 1.
Answer the poll that you see in front of you. Just answer the, Amelia, did you choose poll item number 3?
Yes.
Okay, so can everybody see the poll? There are just 2 questions that you would agree or disagree with the statement.
Yes, it's also on your screen in yellow, in the yellow box.
So give a couple more seconds for people to answer, Amelia, and then you can close the poll.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll end the poll now.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we will be reviewing.
Could we talk about the results of the poll?
Oh, yes, we can.
So from what I can see of the 13 that voted, 13 agreed with this statement. The residents of the 46th district need creative ways to slow down traffic on arterial roads.
Thank you, Amelia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, we will be recapping on some ideas that we thought of last time in the last Livable Streets Coalition meeting. As you can see, we sort of split it up into 4 categories. The categories include littering and cleanup, art and beautification, gardening / community events, and other. Under littering and cleanup, we have public neighborhood cleanup on a regular basis. We have picking up trash and walking your dog campaigns and campaigns to pick up trash. We have public neighborhood cleanup advertised on social media, and we also have storm drain stencils that will talk about trash. For art and beautification, some of the ideas that were thought of were painted crosswalks, murals in alleys, crosswalks that have numerical countdowns painted on them. And in gardening and community events, we have community barbecue, maintain green space, adequate lighting, and trees, and a secret garden. In the other category, we have parking day, more cameras, red light cameras, preventing cyclists from being doored, and physical barriers for bikers. Now there will be another opportunity for you guys to vote on a poll for the category that you guys like the best. I will zoom in a little bit more so you guys can read it. And I'll leave it there for a little bit.
Thanks, Eden. And before we start the poll, Amelia, I just want to acknowledge that Aileen has asked for a little bit of grace here. It's a challenge to juggle the Zoom screen and look at Miro on your web browser. So I just want to reemphasize that we're committed to making this conversation accessible. So Aileen, for you, what I would suggest, if it makes sense for you, just stay in the Zoom room. Stay in the Zoom room. Don't go on Miro. Just stay with us here. Any thoughts or inputs you have, just use the chat. Okay, we're gonna do our best here. All right, so thank you, Eden. And Amelia, did you wanna start the poll? This is a poll that asks all of you to choose which of these 4 project areas, activity areas, you want to work on. And so I'll let you go ahead and start that for me. Amelia, thank you.
And does anybody want me to reread the options?
I think, the options, Eden, you want to read them again? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I can reread them. So there's—
And if you would zoom large on each circle individually and just take your time to stay there, be still there, so that folks can really feel comfortable. Thank you, Eden. So the first option is littering and cleanup. This is a project area we could do, and that includes ideas that you, and let's stay still for a second. The ideas that you guys mentioned at the last meeting. You mentioned that you were interested in doing public neighborhood cleanups and making cleanups regular, right? You mentioned that that people can pick up trash while they're walking.
I'm sorry, hold on.
Okay, thanks, Eden. That's all right, we got it, we're good. You all mentioned that we could publicize neighborhood cleanups on social media and do a campaign, walk your dog cleanup. You guys mentioned that storm drain stenciling is something you might do that would help with littering and keeping our streets clean. So that's the first project area. All right, Eden, can we zoom in on the second one? So that second project area that you guys highlighted last time was art and beautification. And you guys mentioned painted crosswalks. You guys mentioned painting a mural on the ground for hopscotch. So the painted hopscotch stencil on the ground. And do that in alleys where the people keep the alleys clean and kids can play. You guys mentioned a numerical countdown crosswalks, but you want to put some paint on the ground. So that's kind of beautification you all mentioned. And the third project area is gardening and community events. And let's zoom in and expand so everybody can linger a bit. Thanks, Eden. And for gardening and community events, you guys were really energized. You mentioned holding community barbecues, maintaining green space with more lighting. Some of you guys talked about string lights. Some of you guys talked about street lights. You all mentioned tree planting and keeping greening going. And there was a great idea mentioned by Aileen, this sense that the neighborhood could be a sort of secret garden that's green and lovely and invites you in. So that's the third project area. And then the last one, like Eden was saying, you guys remember, we couldn't really categorize these ideas very easily, call it other. And you guys mentioned parking day, which is a day where you turn some parking spaces over to people for fun, picnic tables, music, whatever. Parking day, it's a national, actually it's an international activity. You guys talked about more cameras and lights. I guess that refers to speed cameras and more lighting. You guys talked about protecting human beings on bicycles, protect them from getting hit. You guys talked about expanding the bike lane network. And you guys talked about, just how to make things, make the public domain more protective. So those are the 4 project areas. Hope you all got that. Amelia, you want to go ahead and start the Zoom, and Eden, I will get out of your way.
All right, so we can give a few more minutes to vote. Yeah.
Miss Mary shared in the chat that she loves the idea of painted alleys where children can play. She says, once our alleys were painted with games of hopscotch, people clean their alley, and now a year later, the kids are on bikes. They have backyard pools. Something as simple as a hopscotch made a big difference. That's fantastic, Miss Mary, thank you. Aileen emphasized she loves her secret garden idea. We all love it. With more playful spaces. Spaces for play, for grownups and kids, because we all need play. How are we doing on that poll?
Looks like most everyone's voted, and I think the ones who didn't in the poll have expressed their thoughts in the chat. So I'm gonna go ahead and close it, if that's okay. Mm-hmm.
And while you're doing that, Amelia, I'll just share that Kate and Sarah mentioned they love the secret garden idea, exclamation point. It would be cool to find ways to use spaces to skill share, like where you teach kids how to repair their bikes, where bike experts come, the kids come and you fix their bikes, free or low cost, love that. Miss Mary says, come visit her alley, Sarah and Kate. All right, go ahead, Eden, Amelia.
Okay. We will share the results of that Zoom polling in a second. But first, we're going to go over prototyping and testing. So the main purpose of prototyping is to really make your ideas come to life. When thinking of prototyping, you want to remember these 4 tips. You want to build to think, which really just tells you that you need to be taking people's feedback into consideration on how you can improve your prototypes. You want to fail fast, fail early, and fail cheap. You want to fail fast so you can, and you want to fail early so you can continuously have time to improve your designs. You also want to fail cheap because no one wants to make costly mistakes. Feedback is really important in the prototyping and testing stage because remember, you're building for people, and some of you're also building for yourself. So your feedback is important. And another tip is that there's 2 different types of prototypes in prototyping. There's representative and experiential. Just for a few examples, a representative prototype would essentially be going out in the community and saying, for example, with the storm drain stencil, do you think this storm drain stencil would be effective? Do you think it would prevent people from dumping waste? That's an example of a representative prototype. An experiential prototype would actually be going out and putting that stencil down and like spray painting it or whatever you want to do, or painting it, doing whatever, and actually looking and seeing if it's actually making an impact. So that's the 2 differences between experiential and representative. And I have a few more examples down below. Okay. As far as testing, the purpose is to tell whether or not our prototype is effective, and also it's another way to get feedback. I like to call it empathy 2.0 because you really want to get your users' feedback and understand what they like, dislike, any ideas they have or questions they have, because you want to remember that you're designing and you're testing for other people and not yourself, unless in this case you live in the 46th district. Also, this is a tip for that can really be applied to anything. You don't want to make assumptions when you're testing because you want to get user input, because if you make an assumption, you may be wrong, and then that could lead to other mistakes that could have just been avoided overall. And just remembering that innovation, the key to innovation is just understanding your user. Okay. So with that in mind, can we share the poll results now?
Sure. Can everyone see the poll results?
Yes, I can. Okay. So it looks like there was
the poll results, please.
Okay, so yeah, I can share them. So 25% said they would like to focus on litter cleanup and cleaning up. 8% said art and beautification. 33% said gardening and community events. And another 33% said other. So like parking day, protected bike lanes, etc. And are there any like tiebreakers in the chat that like may help the tiebreaker?
So nobody's jumped on the chat to comment on the poll yet, but there are some very silly jokes happening about wine and wrenches. But we're going to focus. Anybody feel really strongly about gardening and community events versus other? Anybody want to change their vote?
I know some people in the chat had voted instead of using the poll. So I was mainly just asking like.
I see there was one more vote for gardening and events.
Yes, that was Aileen expressing her own wonderful secret garden idea. So would that help the poll? Would that change the poll results? Aileen, did you vote? We don't want to count twice. Well, what does it mean, Eden, when you see results like that in the poll, where there are, you know, the numbers are really close and people, you know, it's not really clear? How do you interpret that in the design thinking framework? What does that mean?
Well, honestly, to me, it just means that like people are passionate about like more than one thing, and there will be other opportunities to continue to be passionate about those things. For example, and sometimes you can like think of like, you can have two ideas and you can think of some way to bring them together. So like if we thought of a way to bring together like gardening and also parking day, or like gardening and protecting people on bikes.
That's great. That's helpful. That's very helpful.
And if I could add, I think Eileen said, you know, the litter cleanup and the art and beautification are kind of the first two steps to get to gardening and community events. So these are not mutually exclusive, but they really do support each other. In some senses, you can't really do art and beautification until you get things cleaned up.
I definitely wanted to jump in to agree with that. It's just like, you know, if the streets aren't clean, like then the garden's not going to stay clean, and there's always going to be trash blowing into the garden. Or, you know, if you want to have an event for parking day, there's always going to be trash like on the street that has to get cleaned up for parking day. Like, you know, just keeping litter in check is like the base before doing anything.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you. And I think those of us in these neighborhoods, we know exactly what you mean. I just want to also highlight a couple other things in the chat. And thank you, Carol, for synthesizing that as well. Ross says he doesn't see these things as independent. He doesn't see them as mutually exclusive either. And I guess that's a good sign, isn't it, Eden, that our folks here really want the same thing: clean, green, beautiful, playful, welcoming streets. So I think Ross sees that. Anissa wants ranked choice voting, but I think, Anissa, that's another Zoom meeting, but we can talk. Ms. Mary asks, would the results change if we were limited to the area around PACA? And that's a good question. So can we hold that thought, Eden? Ms. Mary's question is, would the results change if we were working somewhere other than the William PACA School? Kate and Sarah also said they'd love to better understand the trash issue and really understand the root causes. So maybe if we look at the root causes for our trash problems, that could be part of a design thinking opportunity, right? Where we examine with empathy, why do people throw trash, or what is the issue with illegal dumping from people coming outside our neighborhood, and all the other factors. So I think that's a great question. There is some research on that, and I'd be happy to share it with you guys later. But yeah, so I'm just sharing what's in the chat for you, Eden.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next, using the idea that you like identify with the most, or you want to pursue the most, I want you to use these sort of ideas and descriptions to help create a vision board for what you imagine and what you envision in your community. And it would be my hopes for people to get images from offline, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But if you can't, and say, for example, you're using a device like your phone, you can feel free to send images that you like to my phone. My number is at the bottom of the screen, 443-208-7188. And I will add the photos to the vision board for you. But for now, I'm going to show you an example of what I mean. So can everyone still see my screen? Yes, okay. So for example, painted crosswalks. I remember that was an idea that was on one of the sticky notes. So that's why I'm just printing it out. So say I like this idea or like this image, and I just thought it was beautiful, and I wanted it for my community. I would right click, I would copy the image, I would go back to the mirror board, and then I would paste the image. So at first the image will come up really small, but it will come up where your cursor is. So you really just have to zoom in and then enlarge the image using the sides. So that's just an example of what I mean. If you have a computer if you have a computer and you're able to do so. And I believe we have about 15 to 20 minutes to do this or less. I've lost track of time. If you can't do this, please send images that you like to my phone.
Thank you, Eden. So everybody, just to make sure you are tuned in here, Eden is giving all of us an opportunity to, if you wish and you feel comfortable and you can use different technology, she's giving you the opportunity to leave the Zoom room, go to the web, do an image search of something that you think is beautiful that you want to do in our community. So remember how earlier you guys mentioned string lights. So you could go, if you want to, you could go to the web, download an image and paste it on this vision board. If that is something that, that you don't really want to do and it's not comfortable, that is totally okay. You can describe it in the chat. You could say, I want string lights in the chat. or yeah, so I think those would be the two probably easiest options for everybody. And everybody's familiar with vision boards, right? Where you go to take a bunch of old magazines and you cut out pictures that you like and you stick them on a piece of poster board. We're basically doing that digitally here. And if you feel comfortable, go for it. If not, just describe what you want in the chat and we will grab it from you.
You may have to, if your picture's really small, let me know and I can come in and enlarge it for you. You may have to zoom in and make it bigger. And if you see the Miro board getting a little bit messed up, that's fine. Everyone is kind of like new to Miro. So if you can get your pictures on the Miro board, that's enough.
So Eden, can I share with you what's in the chat right now? There's some good activity here. So let's see. I got a little lost. Let me go backwards. So there's some conversation about street cleaning. And Brian mentioned that there are a lot of efforts already happening in neighborhoods, in some neighborhoods for street cleaning, but maybe not happening so much in other places. So I think like Highland Town is pretty organized street cleaning activities, but McKelvey Park doesn't necessarily. So there's an unevenness there. There's definitely room for cleaning up. And what else am I missing? There's a lot of conversation about that. And we can keep talking about that. There's some questions about the focus on William Paca School. We can do some great things there to make it nicer for the kids. That's true. And anything we do at William Paca will be absolutely applicable everywhere else in the Livable Streets footprint, because that school is affected by Orleans and Fayette. It affects children, and anything we do to make children's lives safer and better is good for everyone. We could replicate, so get that. Miss Mary mentioned she wants consistency. So there's lots of different designs across the city for street crosswalk painting. It might be good to, and it's confusing to have all the different ones. Bright colors can change from community. So Miss Mary is saying, what if we had a sort of branded painted crosswalk where in, you know, Livable Streets, all the crosswalks look similar. So you know, hey, I'm in a Livable Street zone because it's all rainbow stripes or whatever, so that it's standard and the message, the meaning is predictable, understandable. That's an idea. What else?
Delegate Lewis, if I could add to that, this is on the technical design guidelines side from the Federal Highways Administration and probably from the State Department of Transportation. There's been a lot of discussion over the years about painted decorative crosswalks, and where the federal government has come down is you have to have the basic lines there, and Mary, you're right. It has to be either the two parallel white lines and then whatever the design is in between, or what we call the high visibility, which is those thick white lines that go kind of across like that. And so if you look, for example, at the one, the kind of the rainbow picture that's got the rainbow painted on all four legs of that intersection, you can see that there are white lines on the outside. But I love this idea of a branded crosswalk design for the coalition area as well.
Thank you, Carol. So basically there are federal required standards that have to be met, but within those standards, there's flexibility and we could choose what we want. Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Carol. That's why it helps to have a planning expert in the room with you, because you could get yourself all mixed up. Okay, what else am I seeing here? It's okay if you can't drop pictures. You can just describe what you want in the chat. And Eden can do a quick Google search for you. That's why we have the chat, to make it a little easier. I also can't drop pictures on Miro, so I'm not even trying. I'm just gonna tell Eden what I want right now, and I'll mention something I think is great. Eden is include a parking day station or, platform that has greening, plants, lights on it. So that's an idea that I just typed in the chat. And Eden, do you think you might be able to search for an image like that thing I just described?
Yes, let me look in the chat. 1 second. I was just trying to make some of these images bigger.
Go for it.
All right. Okay. Let me look in the chat.
Anissa just dropped a link in the chat. Oh, that's a beautiful image. That is gorgeous. It's a sort of garden, a very urban garden with a concrete and brick surface and a huge mural and people sitting and enjoying. I don't know if you can grab that from the chat, Eden. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't.
I should be.
Great, thank you. Doesn't that look peaceful? And then Aileen added a couple links, secret garden images.
Screenshot of it.
I grab one of those, Eden, that might be good. And just a quick time check. We are okay on time as we add photos to the vision board.
Delegate Lewis, which parking day?
Oh, let's see. Can I choose my favorite? Let's see.
I can go back and if you'd like to.
Yeah, you know which one I like, Eden? I like the one, scroll back up to the top.
Okay.
And there's one with green boxes, it looks like, green boxes, people sitting. That looks like a good one.
Mm-hmm. Good
enough.
It's a cafe.
Basically. And so that's just one idea of what parking day might look like. Oh, look at that. Okay. Eden, there's also from Miss Mary. She says that if we're focused on William Paca, we need to look at streets like Lakewood all the way to the end so that children are walking in a consistent area. They feel safe and they know it's their route to school. I want to echo that. There is an international effort called Safe Routes to School. And some of you may be familiar with that. Safe Routes to School. And it's exactly that idea you mentioned, Miss Mary, which is that children should have a clear, identifiable, visually legible pathway from home to school that's clean, green, physically protected, so they're not getting run over, beautiful, attractive, predictable. Safe route to school is one that meets all the livable streets criteria. And Baltimore City, there was discussion in Baltimore City some years ago about creating a citywide safe routes to school program. It never really got off the ground, mostly because there was no funding for it and there was no leadership for it. However, I will mention that I had a conversation yesterday with a teacher over at John Rura School. John Rura School is in Greektown. And that teacher wants to start a safe routes to school or walking bus route to school project. So people are thinking about this, and we could certainly bring that concept to the Livable Streets area. I think that would be wonderful. So we could include safe routes to school, big picture, not just for William Paca. Someone mentioned durability of, what is it, durability of what? Whatever the structure or intervention we do. Brian mentions the durability of painted crosswalks, Traffic will ruin all but the most durable pavement markings. He'd like to see painted bump outs, but not in the travel lanes. Brian mentions that crosswalks should stick to established standards for consistency and durability reasons. So that's a good observation, Brian. Anissa shared something else, some more images. Oh, a beautiful string light, alley string lights. Wow, that's pretty. Can you grab that image, Eden? That's gorgeous. Anissa's link there. Oh, Philly Magic Gardens. So in Philadelphia, they have a cultural tradition of putting mosaics on every wall. And it was started by this one guy named Isaiah Zagar. So I would love to do that in Baltimore. So Eden, are you, if you're doing good, you're grabbing the images and things that people are sharing in the chat. And then in terms of time, Eden, how do you feel about time? We're close to 6:30.
I feel like we're good on time. Carol, how long do you think you need for the closing?
Well, we had left, we had talked about 5 minutes. So we're going to do a little bit more discussion about the William Packer School, the area for that. And maybe we could, Delegate Lewis, I don't know if you want to sort of talk about some of the things that have come up on the chat about kind of where around the school. We've talked about that. And I've been taking some notes, and I want to say that Jonathan wrote in the chat, anything that helps us reclaim space from cars is something we should do. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but when I think about space, I not only think about physical space, but I think about audible space and visual space and the space, how all of that makes us feel. And so as we're thinking about the what project we could design in the William Packer area, we may not be taking space on Orleans Street, but the work that we do on other streets or in the sidewalk or in the park reclaims, in some senses, reclaims that dominance of motor vehicles with lights, with hopscotch, with banners. So think about that as well.
That's really important. Thank you, Carol. So reclaiming isn't just about the physical nature of an intervention or a project. It's about what we hear, what we see, the messages that are conveyed by those choices. And I think the message we want to convey is that people deserve to feel physically comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
And the message we want to convey is that children deserve to be physically safe, protected, and joyful. And old people deserve that too, but I think that's a great point. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. There are a couple of more things in the chat. Mary Lou would like to see ways of integrating art along with ideas for traffic calming. And Aileen seconds that. Aileen mentioned she doesn't want car space taken out of the streets that feed onto Orleans. On my block is half vacant and parking is always full. Kate and Sarah mentioned that, somebody mentioned a pergola. Kate and Sarah like pergolas. They want to make our bus stops, our bus shelters more comfortable and inviting. I second that. And so that's a good one to mention. Bus shelters are the domain of the Maryland Transportation Administration, the state transit administration, the state transit agency, and they have recently came out with a new design guide for bus shelters. So they are ready to help us make those more inviting. You know what else I think of when I think of bus shelters? I think of dignity. I think of respect. And I think of how our transit system sends a message of disrespect to people who use it, where there's a lack of shelter, where there's a lack of cleanliness, a lack of physical safety. where you feel cars and trucks rushing up on you like you don't matter. There is nothing more like violent than that. So I totally agree with you guys.
When it comes to art and traffic calming, are there any specific photos that people want me to add?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eden. Eden is showing you guys on her screen right now a bunch of traffic calming painted, street images. And if you like anything you see Eden showing, you can say so. You can come off the mute and open your mic and tell her. There's some more things.
I really, really like the bumped out intersections. So it sort of serves to narrow that's a great example right there. With the painting in the sort of bumped out area. I think that's
I will tell you that while we may not be able to narrow the crossing or doing the bump outs on Orleans, if we do it on Lakewood or streets where motorists are turning from Orleans or to Orleans, it requires them to slow down. And so that's kind of a passive traffic calming technique that we can use.
I love that image too, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing that, Eden. Okay, so bus shelters. Are you guys familiar with the Estamos Aquí bus shelter on Highland Avenue at the corner of Baltimore and Highland?
Yes, the push pin.
Yeah. So that was designed by my friend and neighbor, Rachel Timmons, who's an artist. And the funding for that project came from the Southeast Community Development Corporation. And it was part of a project that the Southeast CDC funded a few years ago, along with the bus stop shelter at Library Square. And I'm sure you remember, you all have seen that right next to the library on the Library Square Park. Also done by local artists and the CDC. And I'm gonna share the link of that with you right now in the chat. So Eden, I would ask you to, if you would be so kind, put that on the vision board for me. Oh, I already found it. You're good though, you're fast. Yeah, there's also the bus stop art. It's not really a shelter, but that estamos aquí, that means we are here. And that's an expression, an assertion of dignity. We are here, we matter. We use transit, we are humans, we are here. And I love that. We need more of those.
That's a really great word and translated. And one I learned recently is Ubuntu, which is an African word that means I am because we are. In some senses, that's what we're doing here. We're individually creating the collective. So
that's a great example. Ubuntu is Swahili.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I didn't know which language it was.
Yes, yes. So I think in terms of time, we've collected a lot of images. And Eden, what would you like to do now?
Now I think I'm going to pass it over to Carol.
Should we look at the pictures that have been collected and share them and maybe let folks come off the mic and talk about what they see before we move on?
Yes, we should do that.
we don't have to, but it might be fun. So,
all right.
Okay. So Eden, it would be really great if you would be so kind to just hover on one photo and linger there and let folks come off the mic and or type in the chat how they like it. So Eden is now showing us a picture of a huge painted like plaza. Carol, maybe you want to help us use the right terms here, but was this chosen by someone? If the person who chose this image wants to open their mic and talk about it, that could be good.
That was me.
Is that you, Jonathan? Can you talk about why you chose that?
So a couple of things here that I really, really like. So I like the high visibility colors that are happening. I also really like the assertion of space into the roadway just a little bit. I think the flex post thing is sort of a good way to sort of visually mark off that, hey, there is space for other things beyond cars here. Just expanding out, I guess, what you would call the public space of the street a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And you like the colors you said too. Great. High visibility. Great, thank you. So Eden, take us to another image, and the person who chose that image maybe could talk about it.
Oh, this was me. Oh.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'm still like processing. I've been in tech for many years, working with Ubuntu operating systems, and never knew that word was Swahili. So I'm just processing a lot of how unaware the tech community is, and that's a topic for a whole different meeting. But thank you all so much for sharing that, and I can't wait to educate my colleagues.
So let me just tell you briefly, it's the logo, it's the motto for a cycling team called Quebeca Next Hash. And Next Hash is a technology firm. And I learned it while watching the Tour de France last month, and I got very excited about it. So, and I posted on my LinkedIn page, linking it to a woman that died recently who's a Holocaust survivor. And she does a lot of fighting racism with like rap singers. She was 96 when she died, but anyway, I digress.
Everything about that story was phenomenal, and I want a sidebar later on it.
Okay.
I picked this picture I really loved. I'm just getting into gardening, and like definitely was one of those people who fell in love with taking care of plants during the pandemic. And I think it's very easy when you get started with gardening to like look at Instagram and look at the plant community, with all of their highly stylized pictures, and think that you're, just one Monstera away from living the Instagram life you always dreamed of. And so I really loved how this one showed a more like, realistic picture of gardening that was accessible, that was real, that felt like community, like things we could share in the community and trade with each other, which is a really wonderful part of gardening that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, although I feel like it does very much in Baltimore, which is wonderful. And so I just loved that this was something that like you could put down and take away in an hour and create this green space. And green space doesn't have to be something that is planned for 10 years. We can all make it if we just bring a little piece from our garden and share it with each other. I really liked that.
I love that. This picture. Let's see. Did anyone want to speak?
Someone did pick it. It's Anissa. And I love this pick, obviously. This was something, I'm in Res Hill, so I'm not necessarily in the district with y'all, but this is something that we started doing because there are some dark pockets in walking from Micah and just some of the destinations nearby. This made a huge difference after hours. And it ended up being like one neighbor would do it and then the next, and our entire like blocks are doing this now. And it's made, just looking down the block in winter with these strings, it's such a delight, but also it's safe. Like you can walk your dog at 10 o'clock at night and not feel anxious, which may have happened a little more prior. So I thought the lights are a good hand in hand with safety, but also beautiful.
Yeah. That is, and the question, the city might say, well, who's going to pay for the electricity? But I suspect there's a way to work it out so that you don't lose that positive benefits of having those string lights. So that's really great. So who put this photo up? Or even if you didn't, what is your reaction to it?
That was me too.
Okay.
And I just really liked this idea of a ploppable park, if you will, that requires maybe nothing more than some plywood and maybe like, again, total an hour and a half of effort. The thing that I did at sort of the outset is I just got on Google Maps, went to William Paca Elementary School and just sort of hopscotched around Street View, sort of the four corners around it. And one thing that occurred to me is there's not anything that, if I am driving down the street as the Google map truck is, there's not a whole lot of visual indication that, hey, people live here, and yet we know that they do. So I was thinking about what could we do that just reinforces the idea that this is a place where people live and exist and go to school and do business. And so this was just like an easy kind of thing that, number one, is awesome, but two, I think it's like a totally achievable thing we can do.
Yeah, Delegate Lewis and I have done some planning for the project design workshop that we're going to have in a couple of weeks, and I'll show you that as we're wrapping up. But we did talk about that. First of all, if you're going south on Lakewood Ave and you're at Fayette, there is precious little to tell you that there are children there. And so one of the thoughts I have, and maybe Sarah and Kate have some ideas about this, is some type of large mural on the school building that is visually captivating and conveys a message that people live here, and many of those people are children that we need to take care of. The other thing, at the other end of William Paca, there's that little triangular park that runs from west to east and ends at the library that can be a really great space. To your point, Jonathan, about taking space back from motor vehicles, if you can design something there, you're establishing something very positive, could be. So those are my thoughts. Your all's thoughts are more important, but yeah, I agree.
Wonderful. I had to go feed my cat. I missed some of what Sarah said, but I wanted to just share some more in the chat. And thank you, Sarah, Kate, Jonathan. Thank you, Carol. Miss Mary says, we need to consider the residential nature of the area. I would love the plants around commercial areas like the store on Fayette to sell plants. So wouldn't it be nice if, in addition to having plants, that there's an opportunity to also sell plants in the community, because we don't actually have a plant store anymore. There used to be one in Highlandtown on Eastern Avenue, but it's long gone. So we're going to focus on some more pictures and let people talk about why they chose it, Eden?
Yes, I just like this one. So I was just gonna see if anyone.
Okay, that was one of the, I threw up a whole bunch of stuff. I really love that because it really kind of took a building and connected it to nature and brought that sense of nature and magic into the world. And so I really liked that because we don't have a lot of that feel here in the area right by Paca. And so I just really like that. And as you were talking about ways to make sure that people know there's children, I actually was visioning like, almost like something saying, you know, like over the street, like an overhang or something with lights that would just be, you know, like, hey, this marks off this neighborhood. This is where living starts. This is where children start, but it would also have lighting so that it would work on safety. So, so anyway, that's where that came from, because I'm actually sometimes just trying to vision beyond what we actually have here, because we're so not there. Yeah, right above Paca. We're so not there. And I got really excited when you were talking about safety for children to walk to school, because it's just not here at all. So you know, that's why I'm trying to vision into the magic stuff to say, okay, I know we have a lot of steps to get there, but I need to remember that there's hope somewhere. So that's where that one vision came from, was part of the vibe of the secret garden. And then what I was also seeing is things like that could almost like grow out of the building into the street addressing and trash. And we could just keep incorporating the vision into what's there, instead of one thing here, a different color there. So I was hearing what other people were saying about building out the vision throughout, and that's part of what I see could happen there. Like you could, that and some of the other murals I had put up, you could actually take some of those designs off the wall and into the ground. And I don't know exactly how to make them so that they're more sustainable color-wise and materials-wise, Brian. That's probably something we would need to really look into. But I'm just seeing that there's some neat possibilities with those types of designs.
Thank you, Aileen. Could I share something, Eden?
Yes.
Thank you. Aileen, you said something that just struck me. You said something like, if we start at the school, make the interventions, the changes, the improvements, the livability at the school, and move outward. That's I hope, I'm not sure if I heard you or that's just what I interpreted you saying, but by starting at the school, incorporating a vision for physical safety, for playfulness, for dignity, and then replicating that outward. It goes to Miss Mary's idea of making the safe route to school down Lakewood, and Jonathan's idea of visually reclaiming the space. You know, people live here, and other things I heard others say, that the school could be a catalyst for making the changes we want to see. It could be a model for testing and piloting the changes we want to see. And anything that happens at William Paca, Aileen, that can spread north of William Paca and embrace and encompass and enliven and nourish your corner of the neighborhood, which needs more love, as something that you have told us repeatedly. And I just want you to know you are heard. Like, I've embraced that, I've internalized that. But it goes like everywhere. We need more love all over the place. So yeah, well, so let's start there.
Yeah, I want the street safe for me. And it just really breaks my heart that it's not safe for children, that when I know that I've stepped on drug needles, and knowing that, you know, they have to walk past people that are doing their drugs and whatever when they're on their way to school. And, you know, and I also feel like there's also a safety factor that if we focus on the children and what we're doing for the children, and we're not trying to head on with crime or head on anything else, but what are we trying to make better for everyone? And like, I floored the drug dealers one time because I try to give art supplies to all the kids whenever I find sales, and I gave them to them, and they were like, I'm like, they have kids. I'm not excluding any child, because all of the children need more than they get. So yes, that's kind of almost like seeing the plants and everything come off the mural down onto the street, seeing that energetic for transformation could continue up. Definitely, I'm definitely with you on that. Definitely with you on that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I do want to give us a little heads up on time, a little time check. So we did promise everyone we would finish by 7, and that's 10 minutes from now. So Carol and Eden, what's the best next step here? Eden, what did you want to do next?
I think I'm going to pass it over to Carol, since we have 10 minutes left.
Can we just thank Eden for this great Design Thinking Part 2 training? I feel a lot more empathetic now. And
I do too.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I am I think I need to, can everybody, what do people see on the screen now?
Design Thinking Part 2 slide.
Okay, so we've done that. We've had, I think, as a really wonderful Design Thinking Part 2 training, thanks to Eden and the Vision Board. And I could feel the excitement that everybody had. And I think Delegate Lewis, you captured that really well. Just we've talked about doing designing a project at William Peck Elementary. This is the aerial of what it was, and I know Jonathan, you did a little bit of cruising around on Street View. We thought about focusing the project on Lakewood, and not sure if there's much we can do on Orleans, or maybe it's in this area. So what's next? What we want to do is we're targeting August 12th for a project design workshop where you will bring in the visioning that you had today, selecting a particular location around the school, and then we have a process that we've thought about where you can identify particular elements for the project design, and then importantly, with the spirit of human-centered design and empathy, we'll do some really robust active outreach with neighbors. This is for everyone that lives in the neighborhood, and so we've got some ideas about how to go to community meetings and engage people when they're at bus stops, show them what the thinking is, take their input, modify the design as needed, and then bring it back to you all for approval. That would be the month of September. And then cross fingers, we have a great project. We'll get funding and try to build it out before January 1. So that's the schedule that we've got laid out. August 12 is the date, 2 weeks from today, and we'll get some more information out to you. Not sure what the time is. We'll ask for your input on what time works best for you then. Thoughts, questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Lewis.
Thank you so much for that forward-looking overview, Carol. I do want to make sure that we pay attention to a couple last things in the chat, and I want to make people feel welcome to ask questions. In the chat, Ms. Mary asked about parking for teachers, and so that is definitely an important consideration. Brian mentioned the importance of the usefulness of flex posts as tools to create a physical and visual boundary for pedestrians at intersections. Yeah, so does anybody in the room have questions? Feel free to come off your mic and ask, or type in the chat. We're watching the chat as well. You're kind of quiet. We are pushing up on our closing. Kate and Sarah say, whenever we're ready to go in person, we would be happy to host a meeting and provide wine and snacks. That's wonderful. Thank you. Rolf says, thank you. Learned a lot. Glad you're here. So I think what I'll do now, if there's something else in the chat, interactive, great. So here's what I'll do now. I want to first thank Carol Kachadurian for facilitating and being a technical resource with her expertise in transportation planning. I really want to salute Eden for being our in-house expert on design thinking and for modeling design thinking as well as teaching us how to use it. I want to remind all of you that if you attended Design Thinking 1 and Design Thinking 2, you are going to get a certificate that says you completed both trainings. It will be, Aileen knows she's getting a certificate. That will be a beautiful parchment document with a seal and all that. It will be signed by myself as the founder of Livable Streets Coalition, and it will also be signed and sealed by the director and founder of Dent Education, which is the organization that's brought design thinking to our city and to our coalition. So Amelia will be helping us keep track of you guys who get a certificate. With that said, I want to remind you all that we are practicing the principles of empathy, ideation, prototyping, testing, all that good stuff in our work together. And we will also practice that out in the world. We're going to take those principles into the world in the next several weeks. As Carol mentioned, on August 12th, we are going to sit down and do a real design process where we take your ideas, including your point of view statement, your mission statement, the images and descriptions that you shared about things you might like to see around the William Paca School. We'll have an expert planner, Carol, with us. I hope to have someone from Baltimore City Department of Transportation with us to help keep us, in reality about what's possible. And we're going to roll up our sleeves and design a project that we are going to implement for the school. The members of the school will also be at the table. The principal is on board. The community schools coordinator is on board. I've got at least one teacher excited. I know the little kids will be all over this. We've already received expressions of support from Healthy Harbor Initiative that's willing to help us do some greening and maybe replace the children's gardens that were poisoned and destroyed by an entity that I won't name on this recorded video. We will help repair the harm that was done to the children's gardens. And we can do all of that, but we're going to do it by designing together and then sharing our prototype with the people of this community. How are we going to do that? We're not going to sit on a Zoom call with our fancy laptops and our fancy Wi-Fi. We're going to take pictures or a prototype of the design, the project that we want, and we're going to take it on the streets. We're going to go door to door with it. We're going to set up at the bus stop with a board or big poster picture or whatever you guys come up with. And we're going to ask our neighbors who would never come to a Zoom meeting, who would never come to a neighborhood meeting because they're working 3 jobs and they have elders and children to care for, because they don't feel comfortable in a setting like this with a bunch of people with college degrees. We're going to go to them, show them what we'd like to see and ask what they think. We're going to do that over a period of a few weeks because that's real public engagement. That's real organizing. That's how we get a truly inclusive, healthy, respectful, life-giving changes to our streets. Livable streets are not happening in the Zoom meeting. They're happening when we go talk to our neighbors who would never be on a Zoom. So I really call on all of you to join us for that active outreach that we're going to do. I'll be out there at the bus stop, at the Highlandtown Market, and waiting at the school when the kids come in, if God willing, that it's healthy and safe enough for them to come to school and physically again. And we're going to use all that insight and weave it and tie it into the project that we want. And I really need your help to do that. We're going to show the rest of the city how to organize and design livable streets in a way that is sustainable, truly inclusive and equitable. I hope you're up for it because I believe we can do it and we can have the community, the beautiful, well, how did Martin Luther King put it? He called it not the beautiful community, the beloved community. We can have the beloved community that we dream of. With that, it's 7:01. We are going to share this recording on our YouTube channel. We're going to report back a summary, written summary to all of you in an email and make sure that we get together again soon. So Devin says, woohoo, door knocking. All right, I'm counting on you. Thank you all for being here. With that, we'll close. Stay well, and we'll see you soon. All right, bye-bye.